My HOA president reported my backyard barbecue as a dangerous fire hazard. What she didn't know was that the man calmly flipping burgers at my grill was the fire chief himself. Welcome back, everyone. Before today's story begins, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. If this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll always know when a new story is released. Your support means more than you know. Every like, comment, and subscription helps this channel grow and allows us to keep sharing incredible stories with viewers around the world. And before we begin, tell me this, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. Now, grab a comfortable seat, relax, and let's dive into today's unforgettable story. Put that fire out before somebody gets hurt. The words came over my cedar fence just as a burger hit the hottest part of the grill. Hiss. Fat snapped against cast iron. Hickory smoke curled beneath the maple branches, carrying that sweet, peppery smell across my backyard, while somebody behind me laughed over a bad cornhole throw. I turned with the tongs still in my hand. Patricia Wexler stood outside the gate. Navy blazer. White blouse. Phone raised like she was documenting a crime scene. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 47, and I'd lived in Brookstone Ridge for 11 years without once setting my backyard on fire. That Saturday wasn't looking promising for Patricia's theory either. My propane grill sat on a concrete patio, well away from the house and fence. Nothing flammable hung overhead. A garden hose was connected 20 feet away. A red extinguisher stood beside the patio door. About 15 friends and neighbors were scattered across the yard. And at my grill stood Ray Keller, wearing faded jeans, a gray t-shirt, and the ridiculous black apron my sister had given me for Christmas. He lifted another burger. Patricia pointed toward the smoke. That's an open flame fire hazard. It's a barbecue. Smoke is crossing adjoining properties. A breeze carried one thin ribbon over the fence. Patricia photographed it. I almost admired the timing. Is there an HOA rule against grilling? There are community safety standards. Which one? Her jaw tightened. Patricia hated that question. For 3 years, she'd chaired compliance meetings with the confidence of someone who believed saying regulation made everything after it legally binding. I set the tongs down. Show me the rule, Patricia. I don't need to debate fire code with you. Ray glanced over his shoulder. He didn't say anything. He just pressed one burger gently with the spatula, watched the flame settle, and moved it to the cooler side. Patricia noticed him. And you should extinguish that immediately. Ray looked at the grill, then at her. Seems pretty controlled from here. She stared at him. And you are? Ray. That was all he gave her. I had to look away before my face betrayed me. Patricia started tapping her phone. What are you doing? Reporting an active fire hazard. The backyard got quieter. You called the fire department? I'm documenting a safety violation and requesting inspection. Ray stopped flipping burgers. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. Then he looked at the extinguisher beside my door. He'd put it there himself 20 minutes earlier. He'd also checked the hose connection when he arrived, moved my spare propane cylinder farther from the cooking area, and made me shift a folding table away from the grill. I'd teased him about it. He'd shrugged. Old habits. Now those words came back differently. Patricia finished the call and gave me a satisfied look. They'll determine whether this is safe. Fine. That answer seemed to disappoint her. She expected resistance. Instead, I picked up my drink. Ray turned another burger. The grill hissed. Then my phone vibrated. An email from Brookstone Ridge HOA. Unauthorized open flame activity. Immediate fire hazard. Patricia had issued the violation before anyone had inspected anything. I showed Ray. He read it once. Did she cite a code section? No. He handed the phone back. Interesting. From somewhere beyond the houses came the faint rise of an engine. Then another sound. A siren. Patricia straightened outside the gate. Ray calmly slid cheese onto 4 burgers. I watched the red truck turn onto our street and realized Patricia still thought she'd called someone who would shut down my barbecue. What she didn't know was that the man holding my spatula was the person those firefighters called Chief. Patricia had always been good at borrowing authority she didn't actually possess. I learned that 3 years before the barbecue, when she appeared at my driveway holding a clipboard and told me my pickup violated an insurance visibility requirement. I asked what that meant. She said vehicles couldn't remain visible from the street for extended periods. Which rule? It's an insurance issue. Which insurance requirement? She never answered. 2 months later, it was my workshop door. Then holiday lights. Then a neighbor's patio heater. Patricia loved phrases that sounded official. Municipal standard. Insurance requirement. Fire regulation. Safety compliance. Most people heard those words and stopped asking questions. I didn't. If Brookstone Ridge had a legitimate rule, I followed it. I kept my yard clean, paid assessments on time, and never treated the HOA board like an enemy. But I wanted the actual rule. That was enough to make Patricia consider me difficult. Saturday's barbecue had started 4 hours before she appeared. Ray arrived first. He carried a cooler in one hand and a bag of hamburger buns in the other. Before opening either, he inspected my grill. You always do this at parties? Do what? Set your spare propane cylinder beside the cooking area. I looked down. Apparently. He moved it farther away. Then he checked the hose connection with the casual precision of somebody tying his shoes. I laughed. You planning to inspect my whole backyard? Depends how badly you've arranged it. He shifted a folding table away from the grill and pointed toward my patio door. Extinguisher. Garage. Bring it out. Ray, we're making cheeseburgers. And cheeseburgers taste better when nobody burns the siding. I brought the extinguisher. He placed it where it was accessible but away from the grill itself. Happy. Deeply. I knew Ray had spent decades in the fire service. What Patricia didn't know was that Raymond Keller wasn't merely some retired firefighter friend obsessed with safety. He was still the chief. Off duty that afternoon. Gray t-shirt. Old jeans. No badge. No department vehicle. Just a man who wanted a burger. By 5 o'clock, neighbors were laughing beneath the maple trees while hickory smoke drifted lazily above the patio. Nothing dramatic happened until Patricia saw it. Now, with the fire engine approaching, the mood had changed. My phone buzzed again. The HOA violation notice was still open. Unauthorized open flame activity. Immediate fire hazard. Ray stepped beside me and reread it. Interesting wording. You said that already. Still interesting. What? Immediate. I understood. Patricia had classified the barbecue before anybody qualified to assess it had arrived. The engine noise grew louder. She stood outside my gate with her phone ready. I could practically see the ending she'd imagined. Firefighters arrive. Grill shut down. Daniel embarrassed. Violation validated. Maybe photographs for the next board meeting. Instead of arguing, I carried the bowl of sliced onions back to the table. Ray returned to the grill. Seriously? He shrugged. They'll need somewhere to park before anybody does anything. The red engine turned onto my street. Conversation stopped. A few neighbors moved toward the fence. Patricia straightened her blazer and stepped toward my driveway like she was preparing to greet reinforcements. Ray checked the burgers, then the extinguisher, then the clear space around the grill. Old habits. The engine slowed in front of my house. 2 firefighters climbed down. Patricia immediately raised one hand. Over here. I made the complaint. One firefighter started toward her. Then his eyes moved past the fence. Past me. Straight to the man wearing my ridiculous apron. His expression changed. Ray lifted the spatula in greeting. And Patricia, still smiling, had no idea the first word out of that firefighter's mouth was about to change the entire afternoon. Afternoon, Chief. The firefighter said it casually. 2 words. That was all it took. Patricia's smile disappeared. Ray stood behind my grill with a stainless steel spatula in one hand and 4 cheeseburgers sizzling behind him. Smoke drifted past his shoulder as he nodded toward the crew. Afternoon, Collins. Patricia looked at Ray, then at the firefighter, then back at Ray. Chief. Ray set the spatula on the side tray. Raymond Keller. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Somewhere behind me, ice shifted inside a cooler. A kid bounced a cornhole bag against his palm. The grill gave another sharp hiss as cheese melted over the patties. Patricia recovered first. You're the fire chief? Last time I checked. Her face reddened. I wasn't informed. Ray wiped his hands on the ridiculous apron. You didn't ask. I almost laughed. Almost. But Ray's expression had changed. The easygoing man who'd been arguing about cheddar versus pepper jack 10 minutes earlier was gone. His voice stayed calm, but his attention moved across the patio with professional precision. Patricia stepped closer to the gate. Then you understand exactly why I called. There's an open flame, smoke crossing property lines, children present, and combustible materials nearby. Ray glanced around. What combustible materials? She pointed vaguely toward my yard. Furniture. Trees. Residential structures. One of the firefighters, Collins, walked through the open gate with another crew member. Ray raised a hand toward me. Daniel, don't move anything. That surprised me. Patricia seemed encouraged by it. Exactly. Ray looked at her. I'm preserving the conditions as reported. That shut her up. He asked Collins to conduct the inspection while he remained nearby. No favors. No friendly shortcut because we knew each other. Collins checked the grill placement first. Concrete surface. Distance from siding. Nothing hanging directly overhead. He examined the propane connection, looked around the cooking area, and checked the spare cylinder Ray had moved earlier. Then he noticed the extinguisher. Yours? I started to answer. Ray pointed at himself. I made him bring it out. Collins smiled. Of course you did. Patricia folded her arms. What about the smoke? Collins looked at the thin gray ribbon rising from the grill. Ma'am, smoke from normal cooking isn't automatically an emergency fire condition. It's entering neighboring property. That's different from an active fire hazard. Patricia's mouth tightened. She held up her phone. The HOA has already issued an immediate safety violation. Ray's eyes settled on the screen. Before inspection, we have authority to enforce community safety. HOA authority? Yes. Ray nodded once. Then that's an HOA matter. Patricia seemed relieved. Until he added, but if you're attributing something to the fire department, it needs to actually come from the fire department. The backyard went silent again. Collins completed the inspection and stepped toward Ray. No emergency condition observed. Grill stable. Clearances look adequate. Extinguisher accessible. No extension issue that I can see. Ray didn't celebrate. He didn't wink at me. He simply looked at Patricia. You made the report. Tell me exactly what you observed. She hesitated. An open flame. Where? The grill. What else? Smoke. What else? Her eyes moved toward the patio. Children were nearby. How nearby? I didn't measure. Ray waited. Patricia finally said, I believed it was unsafe. Ray nodded. You're allowed to report something you genuinely believe is dangerous. For 1 second, I thought she had escaped cleanly. Then he pointed toward her phone. But your HOA notice calls this an immediate fire hazard and references fire safety enforcement. That's a separate claim. Patricia lowered the phone. Ray picked up my spatula again. And that was when I realized the most important thing about her complaint wasn't that the fire chief had been standing at my grill. It was that Patricia had put her version of the truth in writing. The fire engine left 20 minutes later, but Patricia's mistake stayed behind. I watched the red truck disappear around the corner while conversations slowly returned to my backyard. Someone reopened the cooler. Cornhole bags started hitting plywood again. Ray lifted the grill lid, and a cloud of warm hickory smoke rolled across the patio. Patricia remained outside my gate. She looked less like someone who had prevented a disaster and more like someone searching for another argument. The HOA violation still stands, she said. I stared at her. Based on what? Community safety standards. Which standard? Her eyes narrowed. We'll address this through the proper process. Then she walked away. Ray handed me a burger. Don't chase her. I wasn't planning to. Good. He nodded toward my phone. Save everything. That sentence mattered more than I understood at the time. Sunday morning, I downloaded Patricia's violation notice instead of leaving it buried in my email. I saved the original message, took screenshots showing the timestamp, and created a folder on my laptop. Barbecue complaint. At 9:17, another HOA email arrived. It stated that my property had been cited for an open flame activity presenting a fire safety concern and warned that continued violations could result in monetary penalties. This version sounded softer. The first one had said immediate fire hazard. I saved both. Then I noticed something else. The newer message referred generally to applicable fire safety requirements. No ordinance number. No code section. No department notice. Nothing. I opened the Brookstone Ridge governing documents and searched every reference to grills, flames, cooking, smoke, patios, and fire safety. There were restrictions on permanent outdoor structures, rules about nuisance smoke, requirements concerning common area fire pits. Nothing that prohibited an ordinary propane barbecue on a private concrete patio. Monday evening, my neighbor Susan Bell knocked on my door. She was 68 and lived 3 houses down. I heard what happened Saturday. Apparently my burgers were a public emergency. She didn't laugh. Instead, she handed me a folded piece of paper. I thought you should see this. It was an HOA notice from 8 months earlier. Susan and her husband had been ordered to remove a propane patio heater from their covered porch. The language caught my attention immediately. Fire department safety requirement. Did the fire department inspect it? No. Did Patricia give you a code citation? Susan shook her head. She said we could contest it at a hearing. Frank didn't want the trouble, so we removed it. I photographed the notice. That evening, another neighbor emailed me. Then another. One involved a grill Patricia had demanded be moved. Another concerned a small backyard fire pit. Different homes. Different years. Same vocabulary. Fire department standard. Mandatory clearance. Fire safety requirement. None of the notices anyone showed me contained a specific citation. By Tuesday night, my little barbecue folder had become something else. I wasn't trying to prove every old violation invalid. Some might have been legitimate. I wasn't qualified to decide that. So I didn't. I made a simple written request to the HOA board. For each notice that attributed a requirement to the fire department, please provide the underlying department communication, ordinance, code section, or other source supporting that attribution. Then I clicked send. Patricia replied 19 minutes later. Mr. Mercer, the board is not required to justify established safety practices on individual demand. I read that sentence twice. Then my phone rang. It was Ray. Daniel. Yeah. The incident report from Saturday is complete. I leaned back in my chair, and his voice remained measured. It documents what the crew observed. I looked at Patricia's email glowing on my screen. For years, she'd relied on people hearing the word safety and backing down. This time, there was an official record, and Patricia was about to discover the difference between invoking authority and actually having it. Read the last line, Ray said. I had the incident report open on my laptop Wednesday morning, coffee cooling beside the keyboard. The document wasn't dramatic. No accusations. No speeches. Just timestamps, observations, equipment details, and the crew's findings from Saturday. I scrolled down. No emergency fire condition observed at time of inspection. Below that, the report noted the propane grill was positioned on a non-combustible surface, accessible extinguishing equipment was present, and no immediate condition requiring emergency suppression had been identified. I leaned back. So that's it. For Saturday's call, Ray said. That's what the responding crew documented. Can I send this to the HOA? It's a public incident record. Use it accurately. That last part sounded deliberate. I will. Good. Ray wasn't interested in helping me when a neighborhood feud. If anything, he seemed determined to stay out of it. That made the report more useful. It wasn't my friend defending my barbecue. It was documentation. I attached it to my earlier request and forwarded everything to the entire Brookstone Ridge board. My message was 4 sentences long. The fire department found no emergency condition during Saturday's inspection. The HOA notice had classified the barbecue as an immediate fire hazard before that inspection occurred. Several residents had since provided notices attributing restrictions to fire department requirements. I requested the source for each attribution. Then I waited. By Thursday afternoon, 6 homeowners had contacted me. One was Marcus Reed from the next block. Patricia had ordered him to relocate his grill 2 years earlier. He brought the notice to my garage. Mandatory fire department clearance. 15 feet from residential structures. Did anyone from the department measure your patio? No. Did she cite anything? Marcus pointed at the sentence. That was the citation, according to her. I added it to the folder. Another notice claimed decorative propane heaters were prohibited under municipal fire safety standards. Another referred to a fire department directive concerning portable fire pits. The wording sounded authoritative. The supporting documents didn't exist in anything residents had received. I still refused to assume that meant every restriction was wrong. That distinction mattered. Some equipment might violate real codes depending on placement, construction, fuel, or local rules. So I changed my question. Not, were Patricia's safety decisions wrong? Instead, where did she get the authority she claimed to be quoting? Friday morning, Brookstone Ridge's vice president, Thomas Avery, called me. His voice was low. Daniel, I received your records request. Okay. Patricia says these are long-standing safety practices. That's not what I'm asking. I know. Silence. Then paper rustled on his end. I searched our shared board archive. My hand stopped over the mouse. And I found meeting notes. I found enforcement templates. I found homeowner complaints. He paused. I haven't found any fire department directive. That sentence landed harder than Patricia's original threat. Could it be stored somewhere else? Possibly. I'm asking her. When? Tonight. At 6:42, an email arrived from Patricia. The subject line read, "Clarification of community safety language." I opened it. She explained that references to fire department standards were generalized safety terminology used to communicate recognized best practices and should not necessarily be interpreted as quotations from a specific agency directive. I read that paragraph 3 times. Then I opened Susan's notice. Fire department safety requirement. Marcus's notice. Mandatory fire department clearance. The fire pit letter. Fire department directive. Generalized terminology? No, those weren't suggestions. They were claims. My phone buzzed. Thomas. Emergency board meeting Tuesday, he said. About my barbecue? No. I looked at the folder on my screen. He exhaled. About how many times we've told homeowners the fire department required something the fire department may never have required. Outside my window, evening lights settled across the same concrete patio Patricia had called dangerous. The grill sat cold beneath its cover. For the first time, I understood what she'd really ignited that afternoon. Not a fire. An audit trail. You need to stop turning this into a public spectacle. Patricia caught me beside the mailboxes Monday evening. The air smelled like cut grass and hot asphalt. She stood between me and my truck, sunglasses pushed onto her head, a folder tucked beneath one arm. I'm not turning anything into anything. You're collecting complaints against the board. I'm collecting notices the board issued. Same difference. No, it really isn't. Her lips compressed. The board has always exercised reasonable discretion regarding safety. Then producing the source documents should be easy. For the first time since Saturday, she didn't have an immediate answer. I walked around her and opened my truck. Tuesday, 7 o'clock, she said. I'll be there. The emergency meeting was scheduled in the clubhouse, but by Tuesday afternoon Thomas called to say residents had requested attendance. The board moved it to the larger community room. That told me Patricia's problem had outgrown my grill. I spent the evening organizing evidence by date. No dramatic presentation. No accusations in red letters. Just paper. Susan's patio heater notice. Marcus's grill clearance letter. 3 fire pit violations. 2 emails referencing municipal safety standards. My barbecue citation. And the fire department incident report. I built a simple spreadsheet with 4 columns. Date. Homeowner. Claimed authority. Source provided. The last column was almost entirely blank. At 8:13, Thomas emailed me a packet from the board archive. I opened it at my kitchen table. Patricia had created a compliance template 18 months earlier. The document contained drop-down phrases for board members to insert into notices. One option read, Fire Department Safety Requirement. Another, Mandatory Fire Safety Clearance. A third, Municipal Fire Prevention Standard. There were no citations attached to the template. I stared at the screen. That didn't prove every underlying concern was invalid. But it proved something else. The authoritative language wasn't being copied from agency documents. It was being generated inside the HOA. My phone rang. Thomas again. Did you see the template? Yeah. Patricia says it's shorthand. Shorthand for what? Best practices. I looked at Marcus's notice beside my laptop. Thomas, if I write fire department requirement, that's not shorthand for my opinion. I know. He sounded exhausted. Then he said something that changed the shape of Tuesday's meeting. I asked Patricia for the original department correspondence. And she sent me a general fire safety brochure. I waited. Does it contain those requirements? Not the way our notices state them. There it was. Not fraud. Not conspiracy. Something more ordinary and, in a neighborhood association, more dangerous. Confidence hardened into procedure. Procedure hardened into authority. And nobody had checked the source. Tuesday evening, I arrived 15 minutes early. The community room already smelled of coffee and printer toner. Folding chairs filled every row. Residents murmured beneath fluorescent lights while board members arranged binders across the front table. Patricia sat in the center. Navy blazer. Perfect posture. A thick stack of documents beside her. She looked prepared to win. I chose a seat in the second row and placed my folder on my knees. At exactly 7, Patricia struck the table lightly with a wooden gavel. This special meeting has been called because misinformation concerning our safety enforcement practices has created unnecessary alarm. Several people shifted. She looked directly at me. Certain residents appear to believe that because one barbecue did not result in emergency action, long-standing community standards are somehow illegitimate. I didn't respond. Thomas did. Patricia, that's not the question before us. Her eyes snapped toward him. He slid a printed notice across the table. The question is why this says fire department requirement. Patricia leaned back. Because it reflects accepted fire safety guidance. Thomas placed another document beside it. The department brochure. Then show us where. The room became completely still. Patricia looked down at the 2 pages. For years, she'd made homeowners prove they were allowed to do something. Now, for the first time, the burden had turned around. And all she had to do was prove 3 words she'd written herself. Those words were never meant to be interpreted literally. Patricia said it slowly, like the problem was our reading comprehension. Thomas stared at her from across the board table. Fire department requirement. Yes. Shouldn't be interpreted literally? A murmur moved through the room. Patricia straightened the papers in front of her. The language communicates recognized safety principles. We are not claiming the fire department personally inspected every property. Susan Bell raised her hand from the 3rd row. Nobody said you were. Patricia looked toward her. Susan held up her old notice. You told us this heater had to be removed because it was a fire department safety requirement. We believed you. Her husband sat beside her, arms folded. We threw away a perfectly good heater. Patricia sighed. Mrs. Bell, individual enforcement history isn't the purpose of this meeting. It is now, Thomas said. I hadn't spoken yet. That was intentional. Patricia kept looking at me. Waiting for the confrontation, she understood how to fight. I gave her paper instead. When public comment opened, I carried my folder to the front table. The projector hummed behind me. I displayed my spreadsheet. Dates, addresses, exact phrases. Source provided. Blank, blank, blank. I want to be careful about something, I said. I'm not saying every safety concern listed here was wrong. Patricia shifted slightly. I'm asking something simpler. I clicked to Susan's notice. Fire department safety requirement. Where did this requirement come from? Patricia answered immediately. Accepted fire prevention guidance. Which document? She didn't respond. Next slide. Marcus's grill notice. Mandatory fire department clearance. 15 feet. Where did 15 feet come from? Daniel, this isn't a courtroom. No. That's why I'm asking instead of accusing. A few people laughed quietly. I clicked again. Fire department directive. Which directive? Patricia turned toward Thomas. This selective presentation is misleading. Thomas opened the board archive packet. Then corrected. Silence. I put the incident report from my barbecue on screen. No emergency fire condition observed. Non-combustible surface. Extinguishing equipment accessible. No emergency suppression required. My barbecue doesn't prove every HOA safety rule is invalid, I said. It proves something narrower. Patricia labeled it an immediate fire hazard before anyone inspected it. Then an actual inspection created a record. I clicked back to the older notices. That made residents start asking where these other claims came from. Thomas lifted the compliance template. And this is where we found them. He read the drop-down options aloud. The room changed. Not loudly. That was the strange part. No shouting. Just the sound of people understanding. Patricia had not been forwarding agency language. The HOA had created reusable phrases that sounded like agency language. Patricia leaned toward her microphone. These templates were designed for efficient administration. A board member named Evelyn Grant spoke for the first time. Did the fire department approve this wording? No formal approval was necessary. Did they provide it? No. Did they instruct us to describe these rules as their requirements? Patricia's face tightened. Not specifically. 3 answers. That was enough. I closed my laptop. Then I looked directly at her. You were elected to enforce HOA rules. You weren't elected to invent somebody else's authority. Nobody applauded. I'm glad they didn't. It wasn't that kind of moment. Thomas pushed his chair back. I moved that all enforcement notices relying on unsupported external agency attribution be suspended pending review. Evelyn seconded. The vote passed 4-1. Patricia was the one. Then Thomas made a second motion. Effective immediately, Patricia would no longer issue compliance notices without another board officer's approval while the review was underway. Her chair scraped sharply against the floor. This is an overreaction. Thomas looked at the stack of notices. No, this is verification. For years, Patricia had ended arguments by demanding homeowners prove themselves. That night, she finally had to do the same. And she couldn't. The barbecue violation is rescinded. Thomas called me Thursday morning, 9 days after the special meeting. I was standing in my garage with a socket wrench in one hand when he said it. Effective when? Immediately. No fine. No warning attached to your account. I set the wrench down. And the others? Still under review. That mattered more. The board had hired outside association counsel to examine notices that claimed authority from agencies outside the HOA. Nobody was pretending every past safety concern had been improper. They were separating actual HOA restrictions from language that had presented recommendations as government mandates. Patricia hated the distinction. 2 days later, every homeowner received a 3-page board memorandum. From then on, any compliance notice relying on a municipal code, fire regulation, insurance requirement, or outside agency directive had to include a verifiable source. Code number, written guidance, agency communication, something. The phrase fire department requirement could no longer appear simply because someone thought it sounded persuasive. The old compliance template was withdrawn. Then came the second change. No single officer could issue an emergency-style violation carrying potential monetary penalties without documented grounds and review by another board officer, except where the governing documents clearly authorized immediate action. Patricia's name wasn't mentioned. It didn't need to be. Everyone knew why the policy existed. Susan Bell's heater case was reopened. Marcus's grill notice went back for review. So did 11 other enforcement actions from the previous 3 years. Some survived because underlying HOA restrictions actually applied. Others were withdrawn because the board couldn't support the authority stated in the original notice. That was exactly how it should have worked. Evidence first. Conclusion second. Patricia stopped attending neighborhood events. For 2 weeks, I saw her only through the windshield of her silver SUV. Then Thomas called again. She resigned. From compliance? From the board. I didn't feel the rush of victory I'd expected. Mostly, I remembered her standing outside my fence with her phone raised, certain that one call would end the argument. Why? Her letter says the board no longer supports effective enforcement. I laughed once. Thomas didn't. Daniel, there's something else. What? The review found several instances where she was warned to avoid attributing HOA preferences to outside agencies unless the source was documented. I went quiet. When? Last year. Board counsel mentioned it during a policy review. That changed things. Until then, I could have believed Patricia had simply become careless with language. But she'd been warned. She kept doing it anyway. Not because every rule was imaginary. Because borrowed authority worked. People challenged Patricia. They were less likely to challenge the fire department. A week after her resignation, I ran into Ray at the hardware store. He was comparing grill brushes. "Chief," I said. He looked annoyed. "Don't start. You're shopping for fire hazards. I'm shopping for stainless steel." I told him about the new HOA policy. He nodded. "Good. That's all. What do you want, a medal?" I was hoping for a parade. Ray put a brush into his cart. "People should report things they honestly think are dangerous, Daniel." "I know. The lesson isn't don't call us." "I know that too." He looked at me. "The lesson is don't use our name to make your own rules sound official." That was the whole story in one sentence. Saturday afternoon, I uncovered my grill for the first time since the complaint. The metal lid flashed in the sun. I checked the hose, moved the spare cylinder away, set the extinguisher beside the patio door. Old habits. Then I lit the burners. Click, click, humph. A clean blue flame appeared beneath the grate. No sirens. No violation email. No phone rising above the fence. Just heat, late summer air, and the first curl of hickory smoke. I texted Ray. "Burgers. 5 o'clock. His answer came seconds later. "Only if you keep that extinguisher out." I smiled. Patricia had tried to turn one ordinary barbecue into proof of her authority. Instead, her complaint had forced everyone to ask where that authority came from. And once they asked, the answer changed Brookstone Ridge. "Should we call the fire chief?" Marcus asked it with a perfectly straight face. For half a second, everyone around the patio went quiet. Then I pointed toward my grill. Already here. Ray Keller stood behind it wearing the same ridiculous black apron, spatula in hand, staring at Marcus like he was deciding whether homicide would violate department policy. "One more chief joke," Ray said. "And you're cooking your own burger." The backyard erupted in laughter. 3 weeks had passed since Patricia resigned. Brookstone Ridge hadn't transformed into paradise. People still complained about trash cans, parking, weeds, barking dogs, and whatever else suburban adults could turn into a 40-minute meeting. But something had changed. Not the rules. The way authority had to be explained. Every enforcement notice now carried an actual reference when it relied on an outside regulation. If the HOA meant HOA policy, it said HOA policy. If it cited municipal code, it listed the section. If the board didn't know, it couldn't borrow someone else's badge to make the sentence sound stronger. That seemed obvious. Apparently obvious things sometimes require expensive lessons. My barbecue was larger this time. Susan and Frank brought potato salad. Marcus showed up with enough ribs to feed half the street. Thomas arrived carrying folding chairs and, after some hesitation, a six-pack. Even Evelyn came. The sun hung low behind the maple trees, turning the fence amber. I stood beside the patio door and looked at the same details that had seemed meaningless before. Concrete beneath the grill. Hose connected. Spare propane cylinder stored away from the cooking area. Red extinguisher within reach. Ray noticed me looking, learning, trying to avoid another emergency. He snorted. The grill lid opened. Heat rolled across my face. Burger fat struck the grate. Hiss. That sound took me straight back to Patricia standing beyond the fence with her phone raised. Put that fire out before somebody gets hurt. I remembered how certain she'd been. Not angry. Certain. That was what bothered me most in the end. Patricia hadn't needed to scream because she'd spent years discovering something easier. Use official-sounding language. Mention safety. Invoke an agency. Most reasonable people would comply rather than risk being wrong. And sometimes compliance was absolutely the right choice. Real hazards deserved attention. Real fire codes existed for reasons written in smoke, injuries, and burned homes. The problem was never safety. The problem was using safety as a costume for control. Ray placed a cheeseburger on my plate. Inspection complete. Result: dangerously overcooked. You made it. Then file an appeal. I laughed. Across the yard, Susan's husband was telling Thomas they had bought another patio heater after their old notice was rescinded. This time, they'd checked the applicable requirements before installing it. That detail mattered to me. Justice hadn't meant everybody suddenly doing whatever they wanted. It meant knowing which rules were real. As darkness settled, hickory smoke rose above the fence. Nobody photographed it. Nobody threatened me. Nobody needed to. The grill burned exactly where it had before, but the neighborhood around it understood something it hadn't understood then. Authority wasn't a magic word. It needed a source, a record, a rule someone could actually point to. Ray scraped the grate with his spatula. Metal rasped against metal. Same grill. Same patio. Same man who'd been standing there when Patricia made her call. She had spent years borrowing authority from people she'd never asked. Then one Saturday, she finally called one of them. He was flipping burgers at my grill. And the fire she started that afternoon wasn't in my backyard. It was underneath her own chair.